Okay, the Volt has 4 operating modes, but before we dive right into that, I want to step back for a second. If you drive the Volt has 2 major modes of operation. We have electric driving and extended range driving. Electric driving, obviously, from when the battery is full, if this kind of represents a full battery, and you're driving the car in electric mode, you're depleting the battery. You'll deplete the battery down to some minimum buffer, and the Volt has to have some amount of electricity to drive. And so we'll never take the energy in the battery to 0. We'll always maintain some minimum buffer. So when I'm talking about electric driving, no kidding, the engine never comes on. You can go 100 miles an hour, you can go wide open throttle, and we'll be depleting the battery. And then when we talk about range extended driving, what is that? It is about maintaining this battery buffer that I talked about. And so I get the question often, well, do you charge the battery? Well, yes, we charge the battery, but we charge the battery to maintain that minimum buffer. And could we take it back to full? Of course, that's some ones and zeros, some bits and bytes. We could do that, but the idea is that we want you to get that full charge as efficiently as possible, as low cost as possible, and without generating any tailpipe emissions. So extended range driving will be talking about maintaining that minimum buffer. So okay, electric driving, 2 modes of operation. We're going to walk through those, and then we'll go through the modes of operation also in extended range driving. So electric driving, 1 motor EV operation, just as you would expect. In this arrangement, which the car drives very well, this arrangement very torque capable of providing the full performance envelope of the car. In this arrangement, we essentially hold the ring gear so that we can couple that large traction motor directly to the wheels, drive the wheels through the sun gear. This would be our only mode of operation in electric driving, but we could do better. And with some incredibly talented people and ideas, we enable the other hardware already in the drive unit to create what we call 2-motor electric driving. And essentially, it's just as the name says, we couple the 2 motors together. And we can do that by utilizing the clutch between the generator and the ring gear. And now we're essentially going to bring up the speed on the generator motor. It allows us to bring down the speed on the traction motor. And then if you look at the loss chart on the bottom left, you can see that the system loss is much lower as the vehicle speed increases than what we have with 1-motor electric driving. Now you might wonder, well, why don't the lines on the top left chart go to 0? Well, the reality is, in those lower vehicle speeds, we're probably going to be in 1-motor EV. We're not going to be in 2-motor EV, so that's why you don't see the lines go to 0. And you can see in those lower vehicle speed arenas that the losses converge, nearly converge between the 2 modes of operation. So those are the 2 modes in electric driving. So we feel that, as Doug and Vicki both have alluded to, that most customers will be in one of these 2 modes most of the time. But again, the beauty of the Volt is that it has this extended range. And this talented team that I talk about has created a way that seamlessly, without the driver having to do anything, and I'd like to think without the driver feeling anything, the car will transition, when it needs to, from electric driving to extended range driving in a fairly transparent manner. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so, when we transition to extended range driving, the first thing to note is that the car is still, I'll call it, fairly electrified at low speed driving. We still try to drive electrically as much as possible. And just to diverge here for a second, there was a huge effort within the team to try to maintain the character of the car from electric driving to extended range driving, so that you wouldn't, give your car didn't have 2 personalities. You wouldn't give it 2 different names depending on which mode you were driving. And so one of the ways that we did that is the Volt is a car with, I'll call it a full-size battery, a very big battery, and a half-size engine. And I hope my engine colleague over there isn't offended by that. But a full-size battery and a half-size engine. And what that allows is, it allows us to lead with the battery and follow with the engine. And we're probably more creative at propulsion systems than names, but we call that a load-following behavior. It allows us to, even in extended range mode, still provide consistent character, smooth driving, and a lot of electrification. So if we go, you need to go back one, please. If we go through a one motor series, can you go back one slide, please? Yeah, if we go through one motor series driving, it's just what you would expect, just as the name implies. You know, in this case, we're still using the traction motor to drive the wheels by locking or holding that ring gear. But at the same time now, we have also coupled the internal combustion engine to the generator. And so, in the graph on the upper left, you see that same linear relationship between motor speed and vehicle speed. But now we've added in this generator curve. And what that shows is that the generator will turn at a speed required to generate enough power to drive the car. In this case, this shows road load horsepower requirements, road load power requirements. And typically, the reason for the dotted line on the left is a lot of times that won't be on because we'll be driving electrically at those lower speeds. But my story here is going to sound repetitive because just as with electric driving, we have the same issues with extended range driving, where this is a very capable mode of operation. You can have full performance of the vehicle, accelerate wide open throttle up to 100 miles an hour, 160 kilometers an hour, no problem. But you will see, if you can go.
Thank you, Pam. Good evening, everyone. So tonight I want to really pick up where Pam and Mickey left off on this theme about efficiency and the entire vehicle, and talk about a few examples of where we were able to optimize the Volt for overall efficiency without losing sight of total vehicle performance. We have to remember, a successful electric vehicle is not a life support system for a battery or a bunch of electric motors. It's a lifestyle support system for your everyday living and to get you around. And here, I think the Volt really delivers with its EV performance as well as its extended range capability. It can take you just about anywhere and do it today. First, I want to talk just a little bit about program priorities, enablers, the things that allowed us to deliver this car you see up here today. Our number one priority, as you've already heard, was to be a pure EV for the first 40 miles of operation. And to be sure that we made this goal, late in the program, we actually made a decision to change to the L892 schedule to gauge this 40 miles, as opposed to looking at the EPA city or highway schedules. And this was not without some controversy or some concern, because we ended up having to rely on the battery more heavily. As you heard in Mickey's presentation, this turned out to be something the battery is very capable of, and again, helps us really deliver everyday driving. Second, we wanted to efficiently eliminate range anxiety, which means not only do we want to keep you going, but we want to do that very fuel efficiently too from a fuel economy perspective, and I'm going to get into that a little further as well. And oh, by the way, be on time for a November 2010 launch and don't be late. So, with these priorities, we also had some enablers to help us get there. And the first one really is we were working on a single vehicle with a single theme. This is really good because you can bring things together, and even if you are doing some reuse of different parts and things like that, you can actually optimize those for this single purpose. And we did a lot of that, and I'm going to talk about it. Also, reuse where reuse makes sense. Let's say there wasn't something to reuse, or we thought we needed a new piece or a modified piece. We basically went ahead and did that. We also had early involvement from critical suppliers. I'm going to talk about a couple of examples there. And also made significant use of analysis with rapid turnaround. And I'm going to show you a few things there as well. So let's first start out with the lower body structure. Our initial Volt design, once we had gone ahead and grafted in the T-shaped battery pack, still had about 41% carryover parts from our other compact vehicles. But because that really, it sounds like a low number, it's actually quite a high number. We knew there was a lot of opportunity in there to make improvements in overall body efficiency, which means mass. So we took a look at not only the new components, but the old components together in a process we call Multidisciplinary Design Optimization, or MDO. This is where we go in and look at grade and gauge changes that could be made, and we do this by going through 100 or so FEA runs, changing those parameters.